Yeah, we can start? Wonderful, then I'm going to start. Welcome everybody on Worldwide Day of Genital Autonomy 2026 here in Cologne, next to Cathedral on Roncpalliplatz. And welcome everybody on the live stream. Welcome. It's wonderful to have so many friends from many countries and continents coming, especially to Cologne, to celebrate 14 years of the Cologne ruling. What is this day about? I think we should explain and re-explain every year again, because many people don't know listening to our live stream, or many people would like to forget, especially here in Germany, what happened 14 years ago when the regional court here in Cologne decided that a non-therapeutic foreskin amputation of a child is an offense, is a violation of the kid's right to bodily integrity. It's not a parental right to cut something off of children's genitals. This was a great impulse for people affected here in Germany to come out, to speak out, to get the feeling that people hear and start to listen and be sensitive, start to be sensitive to this taboo issue. Well, the reaction from most of media and politics in Germany was never again a further Cologne ruling in the future. And to achieve that goal, they had to abolish the legal base on which the regional court in Cologne had ruled. So you must know, since the year 2000 in Germany exists a right of the child of a violent-free upbringing. So it was a real problem how to allow a violation to a child's body when this right of bodily integrity and a violent-free upbringing of a child still exists. So half a year later, the German parliament made a new part into that right directly in the same paragraph of a child's violent-free upbringing, saying that it is, up from then, a parental right to agree into a foreskin amputation of a child. They called it circumcision of the male child. In that law, in German law, since then, it's not described what circumcision exactly means, no anatomic details at all, and neither it is really described what means male child. We think what they meant is child with a penis. Since now in Germany a child with a penis, parents are allowed to cut something off its genitals. If it's a child without a penis, the situation is much different. If it's a child with so-called female genitalia, we have a criminal court even, where everything independently from the degree of severeness is a criminal assault. And if it's a child with ambiguous genitals, we have at least the restriction since some years that it's not a parental right to agree into a surgery to make ambiguous genitals into male or female. That's German reality, 3 different laws depending on the sex organs at birth. Well, that might be depressing, but what still is alive is that spirit of Cologne ruling, that it might be possible to protect all children equally. And that's what WW Doga is about and what we're going to celebrate. I'm very happy we're all here from Germany to have you all here, that you had made such an effort to take part again, and there are new ones as well. So we're very curious to hear all the other speakers. Well, if you want to speak, just tell us. We do it spontaneously today. Go to Gislinde or ask me, then we will announce the next one. Yeah. So, I propose, who could be the second? Who would like to speak? I know there are many of us. Just go ahead. Well, we are very happy to have David Smith here. He's the chairman of 15 Square in England. Is the sound okay still?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Just, we have a more elegant
Das geht
design.
nicht.
Oh, it doesn't work, so let's take the other one again. David, we're very curious to hear all the news from England. You have several people here this year again. Thank you very much, and we will take the microphone on your... Yeah. Welcome, David Smith, 15 Square.
Thank you very much, Victor. Right, testing. Hello, everyone. And I am very pleased that the weather is much better this year than it was last year when I was giving this presentation holding things under a plastic sheet. My name is David Smith, and I am the Chief Officer of the UK charity 15 Square. 15 Square helps men who have been damaged either physically or psychologically through circumcision. And I'm delighted to be present here today in Cologne in front of this magnificent cathedral. And it's one of the most renowned European Gothic buildings, which was declared a World Heritage Site in 1966, and which is now Germany's most visited landmark. Construction began in 1248, but was halted around 1560, with attempts to complete construction restarted about 1814. But the project was not properly funded until the 1840s. I think you can see it took long to get funding, and funding is an issue that we all struggle with, and it was an issue even then. The edifice was completed to the original medieval plan in 1880, and these magnificent towers for its huge spires give the cathedral the largest facade of any church in the world. That's the end of my history talk. There are several parallels to be drawn with the cathedral and the organisations represented here today. It has taken time, but we have grown from strength to strength. For me, once being the only British person to attend this important international networking meeting, there are now a number of Brits gathered here in the square, as well as others who have travelled from all parts of the world. But the creation, success and development of this annual gathering is due to the dedicated team here in Germany, who have pioneered the event, which, like the edifice behind me, has undoubtedly developed from its original objectives and plans, and which will, with growing support, continue to raise awareness internationally and make our subject matter in all its various aspects more openly discussed. 15 Square is a men's health and advocacy charity based in the UK, as I said earlier, and we advocate on behalf of men who have either been affected by circumcision or are being treated for conditions affecting the foreskin. We give a voice to affected men. Advocacy is the art of supporting, defending or representing an individual's rights, views and interests, often by helping them express their wishes and access services. It ensures people are involved in decisions regarding their health, care and well-being, providing confidential and independent support, often for free. And there are many advocacy organisations throughout the world working towards regulation of non-therapeutic genital surgery. In most Western countries, the legal and ethical treatment of non-therapeutic genital surgery, it differs depending on whether the child is categorised as male, female or intersex. And this inconsistency has deep historical, cultural and political roots, rather than being based on coherent moral reasoning. Female genital cutting has come to be viewed in Western law and policy as a human rights violation and a form of gender-based violence, largely due to feminist and anti-colonial advocacy from the 1970s onwards. It is criminalised even for symbolic acts like nicking, regardless of parental consent or cultural motivation. Girls are protected because their cutting is framed as cultural harm. Intersex infants are often subjected to genital surgeries aimed at normalising appearance to male or female norms. These are defended as medical or psychosocial interventions rather than cultural ones, even though they aren't often medically necessary. Human rights advocates and some countries now recognise that these practices as rights violations, and they have begun to restrict them. Intersex children are increasingly protected because activists have shown such surgeries are not medically necessary. Male circumcision, by contrast, has long been normalised in Western medicine, especially in countries like the United States, where it was historically promoted for supposed hygiene or moral reasons. Religious justifications have also influenced legal tolerance. It's therefore treated as culturally mainstream, despite being physically more invasive than some banned forms of female genital mutilation. For boys, routine circumcision is not classified as mutilation, and it's legally permitted, particularly when framed as religious or preventative health care. I know Victor spoke about that earlier. Laws banning genital alteration rely heavily on how medical necessity and sex are defined. For girls, almost all non-therapeutic procedures are defined as mutilation and strictly prohibited. For intersex children, the law has been slower to respond because such surgeries are often performed quietly under medical authority rather than cultural custom. Boys remain unprotected, mainly because their cutting has been historically normalised, religiously defended, and socially medicalised, even though the ethical logic used to permit it doesn't withstand consistent scrutiny. In the UK, there are currently no legal requirements that circumcisers be medically trained or even to have proven expertise. And non-medical circumcisers are entirely unregulated. We do not know how many such procedures are performed annually or the degree of harm, as there is no requirement for any follow-up or audit, and the boys themselves are too young to complain. It is now being recognised more widely that non-therapeutic religious and cultural circumcision is a breach of children's rights. We want to see the same protection for girls' bodily autonomy extended to boys. In a survey, 62% of Brits would support a law prohibiting the circumcision of children for non-medical reasons. Only 13% would oppose it. There is now growing concern among doctors that existing ethical principles of non-therapeutic childhood surgery should no longer include an exception for non-therapeutic circumcision, and yet calls for regulation fall on deaf ears. Everyone has a voice. We must harness it and use it. If we want change, we need to make our voices heard. Excuse me, not only from those affected, but from family members and friends. Those men who've been brave enough to admit that they have been damaged, either physically or psychologically through circumcision, have faced many hurdles. Complaints are either not recorded or they're dismissed, or men have faced ridicule. However, change is starting to happen, as you will hear today. You can help in many ways. Tell your stories, contact your members of parliament, support advocacy organisations, either in practical terms, or if you can't support them in practical terms, donate to them. We need your money. As a united front, we can make change happen. Mahatma Gandhi once said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. I think we are now on the third and hardest phase, where they are fighting us. But with determination and working together, especially internationally, we will win. Thank you. I would like to now hand over to my colleague from the United Kingdom, Jason Metters, He is my deputy at 15 Square, and he will tell you give you a little bit of information about our Stories campaign.
Testing, testing. Can everybody hear me? Excellent.
Put it up a bit higher.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Just go ahead.
Okay. My name is Jason Metters, and I work with David Smith at 15 Square. I'd like to talk a little bit today about our Stories campaign, which we believe and we hope will make a difference in dispelling the myth that men do not complain or that there are no people who stand against this. I was first introduced to the topic of genital autonomy 10 years ago. Whilst I had heard a passing mention of FGM, the harms associated and the cultural practices and social pressures to continue traditional blood rituals, I'd still never really considered male circumcision. I'd never heard those conversations, and intuitively to me, the concept alone was uncomfortable, but my curiosity outweighed my initial discomfort. In retrospect, I think that this is true for most individuals when it comes to discussing deeply personal and intimate issues. There is the perfect storm for a difficult conversation: sexual health, moral philosophy, and, as I would soon learn, men's mental health. Unfortunately, the religious and social environment only makes this more complex, as those affected are put in positions of having to defend their struggles or exhaust themselves by informing each other, each individual that they open up to, about the background to this issue. This is true even when they are discussing their health with professionals, as we've seen countless times with our service users. As I started to explore this concept, I found the most intuitive approach would be to listen to those who have advocated male circumcision and to listen to those who are against. The fours included well-meaning sentiments of social initiation, identity, and duty, all very benign and even virtuous in most settings, were it not for the arguments against. Very quickly, I heard a myriad of first-hand accounts from men that had written into 15 Square with serious complaints, most subjected to the practice against their will at a young age before they could consent, and many of them admitting that they had never publicly talked about their feelings out of fear of ostracization and social stigma and a sense of vulnerability. These stories shocked me, whilst at the same time making absolute sense. And we see this self-censorship in men's health even without the issue of genital autonomy. One of our key projects this year will be the release of the 15 Square Stories project. This project is an anthology of anonymous stories submitted to our organisation that feature the lived experiences and qualitative documentary accounts of the men and their families who have experienced this. These will be available after our official launch at the end of this month. So please, if you are curious about the lived experiences of men, keep an eye out on our website. Our hope is that if more people talk, the more that the harm can be documented and inform research. These stories of men affected must become part of the social zeitgeist and open to free discussion. Whilst we firmly believe that a 30-second Google search will point individuals to communities of others that have been negatively affected, we hope that the willful and intentional ignorance perpetuated by some public figures will become self-evident in coming years to those who are familiar with this subject. This year in the UK, one prominent pro-circumcision fanatic was on record for at least the third time stating the following: "I have never heard anyone from cutting cultures complain about circumcision," or words paraphrased to that effect. Each time he has made this claim, he has been midway through debates and discussions with individuals from people from cutting cultures. 3 times he makes the argument to 3 different people from cultures that he claims he has never heard from. This is a modern story of the boy who cried wolf, and this defense is beginning to crumble. I would like to finish by reading some of the anonymous words submitted by men as part of our upcoming campaign launch, all of them focused in some way on the social environment and the challenges that our societies burden these men with. I hope that you will share these stories and use them to inform professionals and policymakers in the coming months. The first extract: I grew up deeply ignorant about everything sexual or intimate in a culture that treated sex as a source of great shame. The depths of my ignorance are shocking to me now. How much was hidden and never spoken of? Extract 2. This practice traumatized me, and I have been mocked by my own family for raising concern about it. I feel absolutely broken. I feel helpless, defective, and punished. I just don't think I'll come to terms with it. I have been told that it was to stop me from feeling pleasure. Imagine wanting to deprive someone else of life's greatest and simplest joys. Culturally, I have cut ties with my extended family due to it. Extract number 3. Over the last 20 years, I have come to understand the massive ignorance and deception that allows our society to collude with the legal mutilation of boys' genitals, the minimizing of harms inflicted, the denial of the considerable risks of surgery on infants and young children, and the denial of any adverse consequences and the daily discomfort that victims experience. Extract number 4. Sexually, I have always felt diminished. Masturbation as a teenager was often painful as the cutting left me with too little skin. For years, I thought that this was an indication of intense arousal, but I came to realize that it was because so much skin had been cut away and leaving the tight and intensive scar tissue. Extract number 5. And this I actually found a very interesting, logical approach to this practice. Parents have two options, to circumcise or not. Their child, once grown, will have a preference to be circumcised or not. That gives us 4 possible outcomes. There are 2 fortunate ones where the child grows up either wanting what they have or not wanting what they don't, and I won't linger on these, but I call them fortunate because the meaning of circumcision depends entirely on how each person interprets the religious, cultural, and bodily significance, none of which can be known in infancy. So what happens when parents get it wrong? When a child is not circumcised and wants to be, or is circumcised and doesn't want to be? Child A and child B. Both are unhappy, but one of them still has a choice. Child A, whilst he can't turn back time, can still choose circumcision later in life, giving the act genuine personal significance if that is what he wants. But child B is in a very different position. The procedure is irreversible, so his choice was taken permanently. Both children pass through the door that their parents choose. The difference is that child A's parents have left them a key, just in case they've chosen the wrong door. But child B has no such key. He must forever live with his parents' mistake, locked out of his own choice for his own life. What are the consequences for child B? The truth is that society has very little idea, and it's not surprising. There are no records, no oversight, no regulation, and crucially, no mechanism for children to report harm years later. That said, I know a few child Bs, and I want to share what their lives look like. That's the end of that quote. I sometimes think that how differently this issue would be treated if there were no religious and social or cultural considerations. Would we take the complaints of men more seriously? Would we show support to men rather than presume that they are outsiders or strange for speaking out? Reports from some circumcised men describe feelings of anger, grief, loss of bodily autonomy, anxiety, and distrust. The reality is that the social environment has created a unique challenge for us working in this space. But if there is one thing that I truly believe, the words of those affected have value and they have a huge impact. I encourage you all to help amplify these voices. I'd like to leave you finally with some closing words from one of our anonymous extracts. Again, these will all be shared in the coming month in our Stories campaign. And I hope you find it as inspiring as I do. Eventually, society is going to understand and take seriously the impact of circumcision on children and how it affects their development and the consequences later in life. I'm going to play my part in making this a reality by healing myself through compassion and understanding and doing everything I can to support others on their journey to recovery. Thank you very much. The stories that we have collected have been in high demand from people who are working in the areas of policy change in the UK, And we really hope that in the future they will be factored into decision making by well-meaning policymakers. And I hope that you will all spread the message out there. One person who has worked incredibly hard in sharing his story and his message is here with us today. And I'd like to thank David Laws for the work that he has done, not only in sharing his story, but going one stage further and publishing his own book on this issue and how it has affected him. So I'd like to introduce David Laws, a member of 15 Square.
Vielen Dank, Jason. Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Willkommen zum weltweiten Tag der genitalen Selbstbestimmung. Ich heiße David Laws. Ich bin Engländer. Ich stamme aus London, aber ich habe Deutsch an der Universität London und der Ruhr-Universität Bochum studiert. Und das erklärt, warum ich diese Rede auf Deutsch halten kann. Es freut mich sehr, für das erste Mal meines Lebens in Köln zu sein. Vom Standpunkt der genitalen Selbstbestimmung ist sie der Ort eines wichtigen Meilensteins. Vom Kölner Urteil habt ihr zweifellos schon gehört. Also, was ist mein Beitrag zu diesem Thema? Ich bin Schriftsteller des Buchs Dysphorie der Vorhaut. Wir zerschlagen das Tabu der männlichen Beschneidung. Das Buch ist hier. Dieses Buch kann man nur in elektronischen Form kaufen. Es tut mir leid, aber ich habe es selbst verfasst und ich verliere zu viel Geld, wenn ich traditionelle Papierbücher verfasse. Man kann es an meiner Amazon-Seite kaufen. Es kostet nur 6 €. In diesem Buch stelle ich dar, wie Beschneidung die tägliche Existenz eines beschnittenen Mannes betrifft, wie zum Beispiel die Benutzung öffentlicher Urinalen und Umkleideräume. Das Buch lehnt ganz und gar die Idee ab, dass die Beschneidung hygienische und gesundheitliche Vorteile bringt und betont, dass dieser Eingriff tatsächlich vielen physischen und psychologischen Schaden anrichten kann. Es kritisiert den Mangel an Diskussionen dieses Themas. Es wirft die Gesellschaft vor, dass sie beschnittene Männer, die ihre Vorhaut wieder anbauen, wie geistlich beschädigte Männer behandelt. Das ist schrecklich. Aber andererseits lobt es die Arbeit der Organisationen wie 15 Quadrat, die täglich wertvolle Anstrengungen schafft, um Bewusstsein dieses Themas aufzuheben. Ich muss euch jetzt ein bisschen persönlicher Zusammenhang geben. Am Anfang der 60er Jahre war ich selbst beschnitten. Ich war nur 2 oder 3 Jahre alt. Meine verstorbene Mutter hat mir vor vielen Jahrzehnten erklärt, es wäre ärztlich echt notwendig. Aber persönlich zweifle ich daran. In der Schule waren die überwiegende Mehrheit meiner Mitschüler genitalerweise vollständig sozusagen. Täglich verlachten sie mich. Für mich war das ein traumatisierendes Erlebnis. Glücklicherweise habe ich meine Vorhaut wieder angebaut. Vielen Dank für eure Achtung. Wenn ihr mir Fragen anstellen wollt, werde ich gerne versuchen, sie zu beantworten. Auf Deutsch, natürlich. Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much. Next speaks Mark Bradford from Intact Finland. Very welcome.
Just go close to the microphone. Is it good for you?
I think it's good, yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to join and speak to you today. My name is Mark Bradford with Intact Finland, Intact ry, and I'm originally from the US, but I've lived in Finland for the past decade. Genital autonomy for all is not a new value of mine, but as a victim of America's nationwide culture of children's genital cutting, it's one I wish to make clear here today. I'm happy to be a member of the Finnish Left Alliance, whose party platform calls for the end to all medically unnecessary surgical operations on children's genitals, as well as reparations for those who have had these operations in the past. I have experienced widespread support for genital autonomy from the people of Finland, and yet all children are still not protected from genital mutilation equally. I have noticed certain gaps in Finnish people's knowledge of the culture and medical practices of genital mutilation and its effects on the individual, and I hope the audience will understand if I give this next part of my speech in Finnish. Suomessakaan laki ei suole kaikkia lapsia yhdenvertaisesti sukupuolielinten silpomisesta. Lasten yhdenvertaista oikeutta sukupuolielinten koskemattomuuteen on pitkään vastustettu. Jotkut poliitikot, jotka kannattaakin yhdenvertaista suojelua, väittää kuitenkin aiheettomasti, ettei poikien sukupuolielinten silpomista, eli pehmennyssanoin ympärileikkausta, ole rinnastettavissa tyttöjen silpomiseen. Tällainen rinnastaminen on turhaa. Pojat ovat maailmanlaajuisesti määrällisesti yleisimmät sukupuolielinten silpomisen uhrit. Intersukupuoliset lapset ovat suhteellisesti yleisimmät uhrit. Tyttöjen sukupuolielinten silpominen menee joissain tapauksissa terveydellisesti kaikkein vaarallisimpaan suuntaan. Uskontojen ja kulttuureiden arvostelu ja vertailu tässä aiheessa on yhtä lailla turhaa. Lasten sukupuolielinten silpominen on tavalla tai toisella normalisoitu kaikissa maissa ja kaikissa kulttuureissa. Moni suomalainen ei ole nähnyt livenä silvottua penistä. Moni ei ole kuullut millaista on elää silvottuna. Itse olen kokenut koko elämäni terskan ja leikkausalueen hermokipuja, joista kaikkein kivuliaimmat koin lapsuudessani, ennen kuin hermojani oli kerennyt kuolla. Vaatteiden päällä pitäminen oli lapsuudessani kivuliasta ja aikuisena hermojen kuoltua pois se on edelleenkin epämukavaa. Nukkuessani heräilen useasti yön aikana, mikäli joudun nukkumaan alkarit jaloissa. Jos lähtisin rinnastamaan jotain johonkin, niin rinnastaisin omaa ympärileikkaustani silmäluomen poistoon. Muistan edelleenkin uteliaisuuteni, kun harrasti seksiä eka kertaa ehjän miehen kanssa. Muistan sen tunteen, kun sen jälkeen katselin ja pohdin sitä oman penikseni osaa, jota olin siihen asti luullut anatomiseksi, josta se olikin siis leikkaukselta jäänyt arpi. Sittemmin kun muutin Suomeen, tajusin amerikkalaisten totaalisen sukupuolielinten silpomisen kulttuurin omaksumisen ulottuvuuden. Euroopassa, kun tehdään vessojen seinille ilkivaltaa, niin penikset eivät ole sienen muotoisia. The journey to full genital autonomy for all children globally may be long and complicated, as genital mutilation is part of all global cultures in one way or another. I encourage all of you to consider what forms it may have been normalized in your own culture, and to find someone to ask about their own experience of it. We are not uncommon, we are not difficult to find. Thank you for listening.
Vielen Dank. Als nächstes haben wir einen YouTuber bei uns, der einen wunderbaren Kanal betreibt, jungsfragen.de, den ich hiermit auch jedem und jeder ans Herz legen möchte. Herzlich willkommen, Ben Scholz.
Ja, das passt ja ganz hervorragend, Dankeschön. Ich brauche gar nichts zu verändern. Das, was jetzt kommt, mache ich komplett aus dem Rückenmark. Ich habe mir nichts dazu überlegt. Ich wurde gefragt, ob ich nicht spontan was sagen will dazu. Ich finde es toll, dass so viele Leute gekommen sind. Warum stehe ich jetzt hier oben? Einerseits wurde gerade gesagt, ich bin YouTuber. Ich mache diesen ganzen Bums tatsächlich jetzt seit 13 Jahren auf YouTube. Nicht nur zum Thema Beschneidung, aber allgemein sexuelle Gesundheit. Quasi Dr. Sommer auf YouTube, ne, wenn man so will. Das kennen ja die einen oder anderen von uns noch. Und ich habe jetzt zu der Thematik, also hier speziell Paragraph 1631d, habe ich jetzt ein Video gemacht und mein Aufhänger, warum ich jetzt hier oben stehe, ist tatsächlich, dass TikTok mir gerade geschrieben hat, wir haben dein Video gelöscht, weil es gegen Community-Richtlinien verstößt. Aber welche Richtlinie das hat keiner dazu gesagt. Ich darf jetzt Widerspruch einlegen, aber ob das überhaupt funktioniert, keine Ahnung, es ist ja nur noch Algorithmus, das. Was ich dazu gerne sagen will, ist, dass die Problematik beim Thema Beschneidung einfach nur so, nicht aus medizinischen Gründen, und wir wissen alle, es gibt ganz viele Alternativen, Dehnentherapie mit Salbe, Einschnitt, Triple Incision, wissen wir alles, aber diese radikale Vollbeschneidung einfach nur so, das ist halt die Pest, ne? Oder wie die Jugend heute sagt, Totarsch. Und dass das tatsächliches Problem ist, beweist mein Postfach, denn das ist voll mit betroffenen Jungs, die sagen, ich habe durch meine Beschneidung, die einfach so im frühkindlichen Alter passiert ist, ich habe extreme Probleme damit. Ich fühle nichts mehr, es sieht auch alles total beknackt aus untenrum. Diese Probleme sind real und dann kommen natürlich ganz viele Leute, die sagen, also bei mir ist alles super, ich habe überhaupt keine Probleme. Diese Leute haben aber auch nicht den Vergleich, wie das ist, mit Vorhaut irgendwie was zu machen. Ich versuche, möglichst anstößige Wörter zu vermeiden, damit der Livestream nicht abgebrochen wird. Das ist übrigens auch eine Realität, mit der wir zu kämpfen haben. Sobald man irgendwie was Komisches sagt, kann der Livestream sofort unterbrochen werden. Genau, also wenn die Jungs dann sagen, bei mir untenrum alles tippitoppi, auch wenn ich cut bin, die haben aber auch nicht den Vergleich, wie es ist, mit Kapuze irgendwas zu machen. Und das ist dann immer ein bisschen schade. Also worauf ich eigentlich nur hinweisen will, diese Problematik ist real. Wir müssen uns darüber wirklich unterhalten. Es wäre total toll, wenn mehr betroffene Personen sich dazu laut aussprechen würden. Ich weiß, riesiges Tabuthema, weiß ich alles. Aber es wäre super, wenn das noch häufiger passiert unter meinen Videos oder unter diesem Video, was jetzt vorgestern online gegangen ist. Da sind auch ganz viele Kommentare von betroffenen Männern, die dazu schon sagen, pass auf, bei mir ist das ganz genauso, das ist total beschissen gelaufen und so. Also es wäre toll, wenn sich noch mehr Männer dazu irgendwie äußern würden, dass wir irgendwie es hinkriegen, dass es ein größeres Gehör bekommt, dass wir da vielleicht irgendwie gegensteuern können und dass das endlich aufhört, frühkindliche Beschneidungen einfach nur so durchzuführen, aus welchen Gründen auch immer. So, und da ich mir mehr nicht überlegt habe für jetzt, war es das auch schon. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören, schön, dass ihr alle so da seid. Werde ich abgeholt?
Vielen Dank, Ben Scholz von jungsfragen.de. Ruhig mal draufgehen, da kann man eine Menge lernen. Super, dass du dabei bist. Ja, jetzt kommen wir zu einem Gast aus den USA, ein Veteran der Bewegung. Wir haben in den Anfängen, als ich damals anfing, haben wir Artikel von ihm gelesen und haben immer gehofft, dass wir ihn irgendwann auch mal kennenlernen können. Jetzt treffen wir uns Gott sei Dank schon zum mehrfachen Mal. He's coming from. The state you're coming from, the US, is California. California. Tim Hammond from the US. Welcome, Tim Hammond.
Is that good?
Yeah, just approach the microphone.
Everyone can hear me. Okay, great. Well, greetings from California. Thank you for the sunshine, by the way. And I want to thank everyone here who has worked so hard to make this annual event possible, year after year after year. I bring you greetings to everyone here, to those on live stream, and to those who might be listening to me in a recording. My name is Tim Hammond. I'm Executive Director of the Genital Autonomy Legal Defense and Education Fund in California. It's my honor and pleasure to speak with you today on this, the 14th Annual Worldwide Day of Genital Autonomy. I want to take this opportunity to offer you a long-term perspective on the progress of our movement based on my 35+ years of working for children's genital autonomy. When I became involved in the struggle against childhood genital cutting in 1989, we were known only as anti-circumcision activists. Today, of course, our struggle is known as the Genital Autonomy movement, the movement that unapologetically proclaims bodily integrity to be a basic human right, and that every child should grow up with an open future to autonomously decide for themselves how much of their genitals they get to keep. In those early days, the term intactivist did not exist. Many in the general public were uninformed about genital anatomy and the many harms of circumcision. We were seen as lunatics, and people called us fringe. We were laughed at, or worse, we were ignored. And in some cases, we were unjustly labeled anti-Semitic in a feeble attempt to discredit and to silence us, despite the fact that about a third of this movement is composed of thoughtful and compassionate Jews. At that time, the movement was largely concerned with male circumcision and primarily confined to the US, where this highly profitable, medicalized social custom was and still is endemic. No coherent international movement existed. The number of identifiable people leading the US movement could be counted on two hands. The internet was in its infancy, and we communicated by mail, in person, telephone, and by fax. As the movement grew, we found common cause with African women fighting genital mutilation, as well as allies fighting intersex genital mutilation. Today, the movement is truly international, with scores of leaders on several continents and millions of supporters across the globe. For a moment, however, I want to reflect on how I became involved in this international movement, both as a circumcision sufferer and a human rights advocate, and then bring us back to the point of my talk. As some of you know, in 1989, I created the National Organization of Restoring Men and the National Organization to Halt the Abuse and Routine Mutilation of Males. In the years that followed, I produced the first ever social issue documentary to deal with circumcision called Whose Body, Whose Rights. In 1995, that film was broadcast on many television stations, and we received overwhelming acclaim for the documentary. One viewer, however, criticized the film for being one-sided and questioned, "Can you imagine if they make this a political issue?" Now, in 2026, the topic of circumcision has definitely become a political issue. So what happened in those 30 years? Well, I published 3 large-scale surveys of circumcision sufferers and foreskin restorers. Those surveys documented the long-term harm of circumcision to the health and well-being of those affected. Giving a voice to circumcision sufferers is a critical part of our success. In 2011, the San Francisco ballot initiative was launched to ban circumcision. Unfortunately, that was removed by the courts, but it was still the first such effort to appear on a voter ballot. Here in Germany in 2012, as was mentioned earlier, for the first time in history, a district court judge in Cologne ruled that male circumcision constitutes illegal bodily harm, and that child's fundamental human right to bodily integrity and self-determination outweighs parental rights and religious freedom. And today we proudly commemorate this landmark event. However, as we all know, the Bundestag bowed to political pressure from religious groups and passed legislation to make infant circumcision legal. At that point, German politicians shamefully abdicated their duty to enforce international human rights and violated Article 3 of the German Constitution that calls for men and women to have equal rights. In 2013, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe passed a resolution that classified ritual male circumcision as, quote, a violation of the physical integrity of children and a violation of human rights. Then, in 2015, in the UK, Sir James Mundy, in a case involving circumcision of a brother and a sister, declared that male circumcision causes significant bodily harm. A few years later, in 2018, children's rights advocates in Iceland lobbied their legislators to pass legislation to protect all children equally from genital cutting customs. The Icelandic parliament, however, failed to pass the legislation. That same year, in the US, a federal court declared that our federal statute against female genital mutilation was unconstitutional based on Federalist grounds. It was rewritten by Congress in 2020, but in declaring the original law to be unconstitutional, District Judge Bernard Friedman stated, quote, as laudable as the prohibition of a particular type of abuse of girls may be, it does not logically further the goal of protecting children on a non-discriminatory basis. Also in Denmark, in 2018, a citizens' initiative was introduced to make the existing anti-FGM law there gender neutral, so that all children could be protected from genital cutting. The Danish Parliament rejected that in 2021. In 2022, I created the Genital Autonomy Legal Defense and Education Fund, or called GELDEF, to educate and organize attorneys to challenge the legality of infant circumcision and to raise money to pay for court cases. I'm proud to say that we've produced numerous resources to educate attorneys about the fundamental human right of children to bodily integrity and the need for gender-neutral laws to protect all children from genital cutting. In that same 4-year period, we have set aside $90,000 for future court costs. Intact Global was founded in 2024 by attorney Eric Klopper, and in 2025, his law firm filed the first ever legal challenge in the state of Oregon for violating that state's constitutional guarantee of equal protection based on sex when it passed its anti-FGM law that protected only female children, leaving male and intersex children at risk of non-therapeutic, non-consensual genital cutting. This year, Intact Global will file a second legal challenge in the state of Colorado because its anti-FGM law also violates the state constitutional guarantee of equal protection based on sex. And finally, the Health Equity Campaign, the political arm of Intaction, is right now working with lobbyists in New York State and in Washington, D.C. to educate legislators about the need to stop Medicaid funding of medically unnecessary newborn circumcision. But as I reflect on the failed political efforts that took place in Germany, Iceland, and Denmark between 2012 and 2021, where the vast majority of the population supports equal protection for all children, I ask myself, who intimidated the politicians to oppose protective legislation? In some cases, it was pressure from influential religious groups or perceived threats of religious violence. In other cases, the intimidation came from powerful governments like Israel and the United States. In fact, the US State Department, acting as the self-appointed global guardian of so-called religious freedom, exerted diplomatic pressure on those parliaments of those countries, especially Denmark. In every case, the so-called guardians have proven themselves to be the opponents of children's rights, and the politicians who could have protected children have shown themselves to be cowards. These are all unmistakable signs that children's genital autonomy has indeed become a political issue, especially when powerful individuals, organizations, and even governments oppose the will of the people. A lot has happened in 35 years. We and the general public and a growing number of politicians know that we are not a fringe movement, but a vanguard of reasonable and compassionate human rights advocates who care about the most vulnerable among us, the children. Going forward, what do these new political realities tell us about forced childhood genital cutting and gender equality? It means that everyone who supports children's genital autonomy, all of us, must be more proactive in dealing with our legislators. We must write letters, make phone calls, visit, and talk with our legislators to help them understand how children are harmed by forced genital cutting. Under the law, the shape of your genitals shouldn't matter. We all have different bodies, and we all deserve the same rights. Yet, politics has always been a numbers game that reflects who is heard and who is ignored. And I guarantee you that there are those hearing my words today who take the issue of children's genital autonomy seriously enough to press forward to a political victory. Everyone who considers themselves to be a circumcision sufferer or a foreskin restorer or someone who knows and loves someone harmed by circumcision must come out. Share your lived experiences with family, friends, and politicians. The world changes when you make your voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Als nächstes spricht von der Partei der Humanisten Franziska Hellwinkel. Herzlich willkommen.
Liebe Kölner, liebe Kölnerinnen, liebe Aktivistinnen und liebe Kinderschützer und Kinderschützerinnen. Mein Name ist Franziska Hellwinkel und ich bin Mitglied der Partei der Humanisten. Als würden wir im 18. Jahrhundert leben, fordere ich heute Standards ein, wie sie im Rahmen der Französischen Revolution erstmals formuliert wurden. In Artikel 2 der Menschen- und Bürgerrechte heißt es, der Zweck jeder politischen Vereinigung ist die Erhaltung der natürlichen und unverjährbaren Menschenrechte. Diese Rechte sind Freiheit, Sicherheit, Eigentum und Widerstand gegen Unterdrückung. In Artikel 4 heißt es, die Freiheit besteht darin, alles tun zu können, was dem anderen nicht schadet. Diese Forderungen sind jetzt 237 Jahre alt und deren Umsetzung in Bezug auf Kinderrechte scheitert bis heute vollkommen. Auch als 1948 die Allgemeine Erklärung der Menschen- und Bürgerrechte verabschiedet wurde, gab es die Forderung, dass jeder das Recht auf Leben, Freiheit und Sicherheit der Person hat. Ein Jahr später wurde dies in der Bundesrepublik Deutschland in Artikel 2 unseres Grundgesetzes ähnlich formuliert. Jeder hat das Recht auf Leben und körperliche Unversehrtheit. Die Freiheit der Person ist unverletzlich. Nicht zu vergessen Artikel 1 unseres Grundgesetzes. Die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar. Wir sind heute alle hier, um dafür zu demonstrieren, dass diese Gesetze endlich umgesetzt werden. Denn genitale Zwangseingriffe, seien sie religiös, kulturell oder gesellschaftlich motiviert, verletzen genau diese Rechte auf körperliche Unversehrtheit, Freiheit, Sicherheit und Würde. Die Praxis von genitalen Zwangseingriffen steht gegen alles, wofür Deutschland steht und ist mit unserem Grundrecht nicht vereinbar. Und ich möchte noch einmal klarstellen, worum es heute geht. Vor 14 Jahren wurde der Paragraph 1631d des Bürgerlichen Gesetzbuches verabschiedet. Dieser Paragraph legalisiert das Abschneiden der Penisvorhaut bei nicht einsichts- und einwilligungsfähigen Kindern. Dies darf ganz ohne Betäubung passieren und darf von Personen durchgeführt werden, die keine Ärzte sind. Die Partei der Humanisten fordert seit Jahren und leider, muss ich sagen, als einzige Partei in Deutschland die Abschaffung dieses Paragraphen und die Umformulierung des Paragraphen 226a des Strafgesetzbuches. Dieser Paragraph stellt selbst die minimalsten Veränderungen an weiblichen Genitalien unter Strafe. Durch eine Gesetzesänderung würden wir erreichen, dass alle Kinder, unabhängig ihrer genitalen Ausstattung, rechtlich vor genitalen Zwangseingriffen geschützt sind. Die Partei der Humanisten setzt sich dafür ein, dass die Freiheit des Einzelnen immer da geschützt wird, wo Menschen nicht selbst für sich sprechen können. Und ich möchte das hier noch mal klarstellen. Es geht um Eingriffe an den Genitalien von Kindern, die nicht einsichts- und einwilligungsfähig sind. Es geht um genitale Zwangseingriffe, die nachweislich schädlich sind und tödlich enden können. Es geht um die Verletzung von Grundrechten von besonders vulnerablen Personen, und das sind hier Kinder. Unsere Grundrechte erreichen wir nicht erst mit unserer Volljährigkeit, sondern wir erlangen unsere Grundrechte ab Geburt. Kinder gehören keinen ideologischen Traditionen an, sie gehören vorrangig nur sich selbst. Und wir als Gesellschaft haben die Pflicht, unsere Kinder zu schützen. Dankeschön.
Vielen Dank, Franziska. So, jetzt gehen wir wieder in den hohen Norden und ich freue mich sehr, dass Evan Roman wieder da ist von Intact Finland. Does he hear me? He's here, ready. Welcome, Evan.
Maybe raise it a little bit. Yeah. As in an earlier speech today, someone had mentioned that the person who represented British Jews, again, publicly has said on the record, in front of someone who's Jewish, complaining about circumcision happening to them, that he has never heard a Jewish man complain about circumcision. I heard him say this to me in 2018 in Iceland, all of it's on video, and it was after I gave a speech as a person from a Jewish background who's raised Jewish, complain about circumcision happening to me. And it's an odd thing where this happens repeatedly, and it's an argument technique for the general public to ostracize and alienate the other speaker. But if it happens so many times on the record, it comes to question, who is Jonathan Arkush representing when he claims to represent British Jews or Jewish communities if people from those communities in front of him, repeatedly on the record, say that they complain about circumcision happening to them and that they think it's bad and wrong? Who is he actually representing? And I think it's becoming clearer to people around the world, actually, and on other issues as well, that the representatives of our communities who claim to represent and have the position of power to represent don't actually represent the viewpoints of their own constituents. In Helsinki, the Helsinki Jewish community, the representative of that is also in Iceland when I was there. However, in the Helsinki Jewish community, as documented by a doctoral thesis called Everyone Does Jewish Their Own Way, it documented people in the Helsinki Jewish community specifically not wanting to do circumcision and not doing it. They actually had to change in the same year, 2018, the Jewish school used to have a requirement that they were circumcised to go there, and they lifted the requirement the same year. There's obviously a lot of differing opinions within the Jewish community on this issue. And the representatives are taking a unilateral, they're all agreeing with me on my side, using the community in a way that they don't like being used. You might, if naively, think I'm the most complained upset in the Helsinki Jewish community. I live in Finland now, but I'm from the US. But it's actually not me. They kind of have a lot more to say about their representative and maybe being a bit distic. So with current world events, as people maybe get disillusioned or frightened or don't know what to do in this changing world and things falling apart, not being how they used to be, I see this as a great opportunity to make a better system. When this trust in the leadership of Jewish communities and the questioning of do they really represent the viewpoints of their own constituents, and whether it's in Finland or the US or in Britain, that there are dissenting voices within those communities, and just using the leadership position as a political tool with no basis of who they're representing, no longer being trusted, and a lot of things institutionally being less trusted and less able to fulfill its obligations, gives a lot of opportunity to rise up and make something better, make a difference, impact people who no longer trust the institutions and powers that have existed in the status quo and start questioning things. That gives us as activists a wonderful opportunity, I think, and a great opportunity to reach out and bring people in who do want to be involved. Even if, let's say, Jonathan Arkush does not listen to anyone, there are other people who do. And when you do have people like that who don't listen to you or their communities or to people, and you are listening, that gives you an opportunity to speak. And when you have someone who doesn't listen like that and says, I've never met a Jewish man complain about circumcision, and what do I do as a Jewish man who complains about circumcision? Complain more. And that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Leif Thompson from Alaska. Welcome, Leif.
I think that's good. Better not fall off the back here. Okay. I'm coming from Alaska, and I'm involved with a number of organizations, primarily with GALDEF, the Genital Autonomy Legal Defense and Education Fund, but also with Doctors Opposing Circumcision, with 15 Square in the UK, and also with the Darbon Institute in Australia, and with Bruchim, which is a Jewish organization that's working on building acceptance of Jewish families that are choosing not to circumcise their sons. But I'm coming here today from Alaska, all the way from Alaska, to represent myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of any organization, but I just would like to share some things that I'd like to say here. I'm a retired family medicine doctor, and I come all the way from Alaska to speak, and I'm motivated to speak about my experience of violence done to my body 62 years ago. This loss, this violation is so deep that I've lived with it every day since I've discovered what was done to me at the age of 13. The fact that I can speak here today is only because I was lucky enough to find an empathetic therapist that believed me. And later, to the support of online support, peer support groups that one of which I co-facilitate with 15 Square online. The societal forces telling me not to speak are powerful and pervasive. And it's only with communal support that I'm able to overcome those forces here to speak today. And to those community forums, I'm very grateful, and to therapists that are trauma aware on this issue. Now, I'm going to just go into a little bit of a dark scenario here. Imagine yourself being taken away, strapped to a board, your screams ignored, then having the most sensitive part of your genitals cut away without any anesthetic. When we think of this happening to an adult, it's horrific. But that's exactly what happened to me 62 years ago as an infant. Because my screams were in another room, unseen, we all want to pretend that it didn't happen. But it did happen. Anesthetic is still only an optional part of the procedure in the United States and many places. Now imagine that same situation as an adult, but this time those assaulting you are using an injectable anesthetic so that you won't feel the cut part of your genitals as they cut it away. Does that change how you feel about what is being done to you? Is it that much better that the amputation that you didn't want was not as painful as it could have been otherwise? In the rare country that requires anesthetic to be used for boys, like Norway and Sweden, the people comfort themselves that at least he didn't feel the pain. Yet the violation of an unconsented amputation still happened. Non-consensual amputation is clearly something we would find horrific if it was done to an adult or to a girl child, but for a boy child, there's no outrage. Now think, why is this violation allowable when it is done to a boy child who has not consented, but horrific when done to an adult? And why is there a difference if the child is born with a penis and not with a vulva? Why do we condition the right to have one's body protected entirely based on the shape of the genitals at birth? Why do we not see these protections based entirely on one's sex as an extreme form of sexism? Why is the right to our body conditional on our sex and our age? And personally ask, why is it only people that look like me that are still not protected? As a society, we have elevated social concern for the plight of girls being subjected to genital cutting and call this a form of gender-based violence. But this requires us to completely ignore that this same violence is being perpetrated against the girls' brothers. It is a fact that all cultures that cut girls also cut boys. And the boys are cut in much larger numbers around the world. Is it that boys do not have a gender that counts, or is it because they are male, we can't consider what happens to them to be violence? Boys have no legal protection from this violence to their bodies anywhere on this earth, based on an assumption of male inviolability. And it's shared as much by those advocating for the exclusivity of protecting girls as it is those trying to maintain patriarchal systems. We project this idea of male invulnerability onto those born with penises, and as a result, we can't see them as victims of violence, of non-voluntary genital cutting, even as they are every bit as vulnerable as girl children. I know that as a white, cisgendered, heterosexual man, I am understood to be privileged. But this assumption in some ways makes me invisible as a victim. And by proxy, those born looking like me, having a penis, are also invisible to our empathy. I am deeply aware that I am viewed with suspicion when asking those born with penises should also be treated equally. Yet here I am, unapologetically asking those working exclusively for the end to the cutting of female children in foreign cultures to take a look at your motivations. Who do you consider worthy of your empathy and why? I also ask you to question the exclusionary rhetoric such as gender-based violence. Language explicitly intended to exclude boys from the discussion of childhood genital cutting. We must come to see that the power dynamic that allows the cutting of any child is a dynamic of adult over child, not male over female. This distortion continues to impede our progress. I want to say this as a respectful challenge. We all work in our area of passion, I recognize this, but creating a system of advocacy around the exclusion of boys makes it impossible for us to see the larger picture. We all need to come together if we're to stop any of this. Equality is a challenging concept, and I'm challenging everyone here to think beyond your conditioning. Personally, I identify as a man. I did not consent. Before I had any voice to say no, before I had any knowledge of my identities, I had a body and I did not consent. Yet I was violated in my own culture specifically because I was born with a penis. Now I'm forced to live with the damages of social control over my body. As I reflect on the exclusion of boys, I must question what my place in our society is. When this grave violation I experience is completely ignored because of my gender. No, I cannot see myself as a full member of our society as long as the laws of every country on this earth exclude me from the basic protections of my body because of who I am. I see myself as a human being, but I'm not considered entitled to the rights of being human under any legal system. For that, I feel unwelcome and I do not belong. 62 years ago, my screams were ignored when they cut into my penis without anesthetic. 62 years ago, I was overpowered when they said, "Your body, my rights." If you are born with a penis, this is not a thing of the past. Parents, doctors, governments, social institutions still proclaim to those born with a penis, "Your body, my choice." Boys continue to be left without a voice, and their screams continue to go unheard right here, right now. I'm here today as an adult, 62 years after being violated, to say no. It was my body, my choice, and no one else's. I'm here today to speak for the boys whose screams are still being ignored by the German government and by governments throughout Europe and in England and throughout the USA and the Americas and throughout Africa and the Middle East. I am here as a man who believes that I have a right to my own body, not as a special case because of my maleness, but simply because I am no less human than anyone else. I am here for the boys who are being ignored to say, no, we do not consent. Today, I'm not just asking to belong as a human, I'm demanding it. We will not be made invisible any longer. But I don't want to exclusively have the attention to boys, even though by numbers that's what's happening here in our culture. Instead, my vision is that there should be really one movement, a movement to protect all children from any form of non-voluntary excisions or alterations to their genitals, regardless of their gender. A movement where all children are protected equally simply because they are born as human beings and because their right to their own body is not a gender-based right. I'd like to leave you with this image of a sacred flower. Every child is born with a beautiful, unique, private flower of their own. This flower has the potential to bloom into joy, into pleasure, into connection. This flower can give a sense of identity, belonging, and well-being. Almost magically, this flower can be where a new life is created and where a new life is brought into the world. This flower is not shameful. It is not trivial. This flower is sacred. A child's sacred flower is theirs alone. They may later choose to share it with whomever they please, or they may choose not to share it. They may choose to change it or keep it as it is. They may choose to decorate it however they want, or let it shine in its own beauty. They can do these things when they are ready, by their own choice and by their own consent. Every child, every human has a birthright to consent, to be able to say, my body, my choice. It doesn't matter if the shape of the flower is a penis, a vulva, or something more rare and special. What truly matters is that it's the child's private and sacred flower, and not anyone else's. Our duty, everyone's duty, is to protect all children, regardless of what their sacred flower looks like. We must protect them from anyone else claiming the sacred flower as their own. We need to protect them from those that would violate what isn't theirs. We are all human beings together, men, women, and persons with variations of sexual characteristics. We are all humans, and we really must go beyond the statement, my body, my choice. This is not far enough. What this is really about is all of us coming together, both men and women, but also the gender diverse and peoples with genital variation. We need to all come together to say, our bodies, our choice. We, the people that have bodies, we, the people that live in bodies of many shapes, will not tolerate leaving anyone out. We will see to it that no child of any shape will ever be considered less of a full human being. We are all in this together.
Thanks very much, Leif Thompson. Ja, jetzt kommen wir zu Uli Schauen, allen, die sich mit einer sehr, sehr besonderen und unglaublichen Thematik beschäftigen möchten, nämlich das Penisvorhautabschneiden von Kindern allen Ernstes als sogenannte HIV-Prophylaxe mit öffentlichen westlichen Geldern finanziert in Afrika, in vielen Ländern gewütet hat, beschäftigen möchten mit diesem Thema, die bitte ich einmal ihn zu googeln, Uli Schauen. Es gibt da sehr, sehr informative Radio-Features, Deutschlandfunk, und er ist heute hier, wofür wir sehr dankbar sind, um uns zu berichten von weiteren solchen Programmen, wie die weltweit leider auch Fortsetzungen finden in anderen Kontexten. Vielen Dank, Uli Schauen, dass du uns heute hier davon berichtest.
Thank you for having me here. I talk in English. If you don't understand, I can repeat in German, but
this is a worldwide broadcast at the same time as it is a demonstration, so a manifestation, so I do that. I have started reporting on male circumcision after this jurisdiction in 2012, so 14 years ago, where I just offered WDR, who is at the station that is nearby, to do a report about it, and they said, yeah, please do it about male circumcision and what it, who likes it, who doesn't like it, but don't mention religion, because they were really keen not to be called anti-Semitic. And yeah, well, I did that. You know, I'm freelance. I have to earn my money. Later on, the law was changed. You heard about it, and I had jobs to do in Africa. And when I went to Lake Victoria in Kenya, I saw a poster in a fisherman's office, and they said, "Come circumcise. Come get circumcised." They offered circumcision for free. And I became interested in that. And I learned that this is a program financed by PEPFAR. It's the US presidential program against HIV/AIDS worldwide, because HIV, if it is somewhere, it also endangers other countries like United States. And this was a huge program, I learned. So far, the website of the WHO, the World Health Organization, says that 35 million young and older Africans were circumcised in the name of AIDS protection, prevention, lowering the rate, and there it starts. Because it's just based on 3 studies that were done in Africa in high prevalence areas, which found out in double-blind studies that with 2 groups, that the group that was circumcised had a 60% less chance of acquiring AIDS. And the one I did Victor said that I did a radio report on it, a long one. You can find it online again, still, in ARD Mediathek, and you can find it. And I, in the beginning, I thought, yeah, okay, this is a valid, maybe this is a valid cause. Huh? But then I got connected to critiques. The main critique of this is Michel Garenne in Paris, of the Institut France Pasteur, and he said, and he pointed to the fact that 60% less chance is not like being vaccinated against HIV. So you might get the impression that you can fuck around like you unprotected as you want, and then you acquire it, and you have a 100% chance if you do that for a while. And that is one point. And the other point is that this campaign, and you can still find it on PEPFAR web pages and WHO web pages, that the campaign attributes every success in HIV protection in Africa to circumcision. While they have done other things, of course. They have informed, they have PrEP, they have pre-exposure, they have after-exposure medication, they distributed that, they propagated condoms, of course. But each and every progress in lowering the HIV rate was attributed to cutting the foreskins. That was funny to me and really peculiar. Once again, I was in 2022, I think, I was again at Lake Victoria, and I asked the guys who were doing the circumcision campaign and all this HIV prevention stuff, now where's Professor Bailey from Chicago? He was there somehow supervising it from the United States before and traveling there on and off, and he probably had a home at Lake Victoria. And then the guy there told me, Professor Bailey is in Indonesia. And I asked, what is he doing in Indonesia? And I was answered the same thing. He's circumcising. He's propagating circumcising. And I called up Professor Bailey in Chicago, and he confirmed that they are doing a study how to convince the people in Indonesia which are not circumcised, which are a minority in Western Papua. Don't confuse with Papua New Guinea. It is Western Papua. It's a province of Indonesia. We're trying to convince them. with the methods that he had applied in Kenya and in 23 other countries in Africa to the non-circumcised communities there. So he confirmed that, but the study was not yet over. And later on I asked, so what about the study? Is it a success? And I researched it. Later he didn't answer the phone again. He didn't call me up again. He didn't answer the mails. And later I learned you can find the study online. The result, was not a success. The young guys over 14, 15 to 19 that they tried to convince in schools, only 94 of them got circumcised, and they had thought they could convince 400. Now, by the way, the age of 14, this is something which is really a crime in Africa. It has been a crime in Africa. It is a high-risk thing if you circumcise young boys, because the penis develops over time. It has stages, like the vulva, like the female private part also develop over time. And it is a high risk to cut away something when they are 8, 9, 10, 11. And they did that in Kenya. They did that in Kenya. Propagated went to the primary schools and said, get away of that skin goat that you are carrying here between your legs. It's dirty. And they made pressure, and the group pressure among the boys was high. I talked to people, to boys who had to convince their father, who was from an uncircumcising community, let me get circumcised, because I will be an outsider in school if I don't. So the father reluctantly, as a modern father, he undersigned the acknowledgement that his boy should be circumcised, and it was because of that propaganda. Now there's a good story about Africa. The good story about Africa is this evil guy, Mr. Trump, he's saving foreskin now. Because he has cut all the aid to HIV prevention. That is the good part of it. So, but the bad part of it is, of course, that all the medication that they were distributing, all the care that they are distributing to HIV-carrying pregnant mothers, and so on, has been stopped also. So they're doing harm to HIV prevention in Africa because of these, again, selfish motives. And now the bad news about Indonesia. Okay, the good news, I told you, the Indonesian older boys in puberty, they don't want to circumcise. They don't get convinced by a team of elders or in conjunction with scientists. That's what they tried. But the Indonesian army does. They go to the villages. They offer, you can get your boy circumcised for free. You are poor. And then but they're also threatening somehow by their appearance. This is the Indonesian army, who is also threatening all their livelihood as a minority, as a Christian minority in the east of Indonesia, in the west of Papua. So you can find these videos online, and you can find that whole story, which I wrote for the 14th anniversary of that day, for hpd.de, Humanist Press Service in Germany. The humanists are here. I don't know if you are related to them. But somehow, yes. They are the non-religious people in Germany. And you can also have this Google translated. It's in German, but if you look at it from another part of the world, you just paste that link to a translation website like Google or DeepL. Google is again supporting Trump, so try another one. But anyway, Ecosia. They're using also some other. But anyway, that is it. I wanted to open your minds a bit from Europe to other parts of the world where it is ethnically based, the circumcision, and not religiously and not custom based. And it's a lot of power behind it and a lot of money. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Uli Schauen. Als nächste Rednerin haben wir die Journalistin und Filmemacherin Renate Bernhardt. Herzlich willkommen.
Hi, I will try. I will try to do this in English too. My name is Renate Bernhardt, and I have a website, Renate-Bernhardt, and I have a chapter there on genital autonomy. I started doing this because I've been working as a journalist on this subject since 1998, when I was traveling in Ethiopia, and I got to know about female genital mutilation in Ethiopia. And when I brought this subject, and wanted to report on this in Germany, we were at the very beginning of awareness that this is devastating for women and a big problem. And the first reactions when I proposed the subject, also as a freelancer like Uli Schauen, were, we don't mingle in foreign religions, and we don't mingle in foreign cultures, because this is colonialism. We don't do this anymore. Okay. Has nothing to do with religion, but this is what the people believed. And then the second thing was prove that this is a problem here. And then very shortly after this, Boris Diri came up, raised her voice, and her her very important book, Wüstenblume, Desert Flower, became world famous. And with this voice, we were able to publish the first radio report on German radio in Germany. And we got a prize, and afterwards also a film that we could do. And so first I concentrated on female genital mutilation. Then a next subject I treated was inspired by Terre des Femmes, was forced marriage. And first of all, I did not see these two subjects connected. I learned about honor crimes and femicides, and I tried to understand the concept of honor crimes and what is behind it. And then with the time, I understood that all this is deeply rooted and connected, and it was only due to the founders of the Day of Genital Autonomy, Worldwide Day of Genital Autonomy, that I finally understood what I was doing, that all these subjects are connected. And the founders of Worldwide Day of Genital Autonomy said, you have to look at the boys as well. And I absolutely agree now. Before, at the very beginning, my first film was announced by the TV that there's no comparison with boys. Female genital mutilation is awful, and boys is nothing. It's just nothing compared to girls' circumcision. This is what they believed at the time, and this is what is still very much in the media and in people's minds, not understanding the system that is behind all this. Because boys' circumcision is, like in all the countries where girls are circumcised, boys are circumcised as well. Where girls are cut, boys are circumcised as well. And girls are told, you are being cut because you become a woman now. Boys are told, you are being cut because you are a boy now. You are going to be a boy now. So it's the same thinking. And how can you expect a father to protect a girl, his daughter, or a man choosing a woman uncircumcised, if he has understood and deeply has been cut into his body that you are a man because you are cut, and a woman is a woman because she's cut. So if this thinking will not get out of the heads of the people, we cannot fight genital mutilation properly. So there are also still a lot of feminists who are believing this, and we need to change this. I think this is very important. This is one thing that is absolutely wrong in the minds of the people. And another one is, when you talk about boys' circumcision, everybody says, oh, it's the Jewish, which is completely wrong if you look at the numbers. The numbers, there is, like in Germany, there is a number of, like, we have 200,000 Jews in Germany, and maybe a very little, half of it is women, and then a very small group of Jewish people is circumcised, in fact. And we have round about 600, we have much more boys who are circumcised by phimosis, by medical treatment, which is done far too often. So the problem is not looking at the Jews, but we should look at our own medical system. And fortunately, we have the phimosis doctors, what do you call it? Doctors' headline, what they should do, that says we should cut down medical treatment. And this is something where we should concentrate and look, and not on the Jewish problem. Yeah? And we are often told that this is anti-Semitic, what we are doing, but in fact, I think what is anti-Semitic is that we are kind of pointing at the Jews where we should really take care of ourselves and our medical system, about human rights of children and their right to be protected against violence, against bodily harm, and that they should have their own choice. So I think this is the point we should make and make this understood. Okay, this was not prepared and in English without any preparation. I hope I could get it through. Thank you very much. Nochmal auf Deutsch. Echt?
Vielen Dank, Renate. Deutsch kommt auch nochmal. Jetzt darf ich aber als nächste Rednerin, ob sie Englisch oder Deutsch spricht, weiß ich nicht, ankündigen, aber sie spricht jedes Mal großartig. Herzlich willkommen, Lilith Rasa von Sofra Queer Migrants.
Ein bisschen höher wäre super.
Bekommst du ja. Du musst einfach mehr ran.
Okay. Ist das in Ordnung? Jetzt? Ist auch hörbar, ne? Alles gut. Danke dir. Schönen guten Tag. Ich werde heute auf Deutsch reden und nicht auf Englisch. Wir können das im Nachhinein irgendwann mal mit Untertiteln zur Verfügung stellen. Also, mein Name ist Lilith und ich werde heute über einiges reden, und zwar über Selbstbestimmung, sexuelle Selbstbestimmung und Selbstbestimmung, wenn es um den Körper geht. Was bedeutet denn Selbstbestimmung? Wir reden über Selbstbestimmung seit Jahrhunderten mittlerweile. Frauen haben auch eine Bewegung gehabt, dass sie wollen alles selbst bestimmen. Männer haben die Bewegungen vor tausenden Jahren vielleicht gehabt, die bestimmen sowieso alles selber, aber Männer. Aber wenn es um die Kinder geht, wo ist die Selbstbestimmung von Kindern? Können wir überhaupt für Kinder oder die Kinder einfach diese Gelegenheit anbieten, dass sie über ihren eigenen Körper selber bestimmen können? Da erzähle ich euch was aus Erfahrung, aus unterschiedlichen Ereignissen, die im Leben, die in meinem Leben vor allem und auch im Leben von den Menschen, die ich getroffen habe, passiert sind. Kinder haben keine Selbstbestimmung, egal wo wir hingehen. Und meine Vorrednerinnen, die haben auch darüber geredet, es ist kein religiöses Thema. Ist es ein religiöses Thema? Ist es ein medizinisches Thema? Ist es ein gesellschaftliches Thema? Ist es ein Thema der Emanzipation der Kinder? Wir müssen Kinder emanzipieren. Und die Kinder können wir nur dann emanzipieren, wenn wir unsere Hände von deren Genitalien weglassen. Wir dürfen Kindergenitalien nicht anfassen. Wenn ein Kind auf diese Welt kommt, auf diese Erde kommt, hat ein Genitalien. Es kann männlich sein, es kann weiblich sein, es kann intergeschlechtlich sein. Und wir wollen versuchen, diese Genitalien laut unserer Vorstellungen zu ändern. Und das machen wir jetzt seit Jahrtausenden. Ich weiß es nicht, wann haben die Leute damit angefangen. Aber all diese Eingriffe, die haben Konsequenzen. Und die Konsequenzen müssen diesen Menschen tragen, nicht die Entscheiderinnen, nicht die Gesellschaft, nicht die Ärztinnen, nicht die Leute, die einfach mit einem Messer kommen an irgendeinem Tag und entscheiden, heute ist der Tag, an dem nehme ich deine Genitalbereiche einfach weg von dir. Und das passiert im Jahr 2026. Wir in Deutschland denken, wir sind fortgeschritten, wir haben sehr viel erreicht, wir sind die besten Menschen auf diesem Planeten, wir haben auch eine Klimagerechtigkeit, wir haben auch Menschengerechtigkeit, wir haben überall Rechte. Das stimmt nicht. Eine Person mit einem gesunden Menschenverstand, wenn die herumguckt, dann sieht man, wir sind nicht emanzipiert. Wir werden unterdrückt, zu einer Gruppe zu gehören, die eigentlich nicht unsere Gruppe ist. Wir haben das nicht entschieden. Ich habe nicht entschieden, in einer muslimischen Familie geboren zu werden. Ein jüdisches Kind hat das nicht entschieden, in einer jüdischen Familie geboren zu werden. Ein Zulu-Kind hat das nicht entschieden, in einer Zulu-Familie geboren zu werden oder in Papua-Neuguinea oder irgendwo auf diesem Planeten, wo die Eltern und vor allem die erwachsenen Menschen entscheiden, heute nehmen wir deine Genitalien weg. Und vor kurzem habe ich gesagt, dass die Konsequenzen müssen wir tragen, die Betroffenen. Wir sind keine Opfer, wir sind Betroffenen und wir müssen damit leben. Manche von uns können das, andere das auch nicht. Ich will es hier auch nicht sagen, dass jede Person, die ihre Vorhaut oder ihr Genital verstümmelt bekommen hat, kein Leben mehr hat. Die haben ein Leben, aber es ist sehr, sehr beschränkt. Es ist nicht genau das, was die Natur vorhergesehen hat. Penisvorhaut für Transfrauen ist extrem wichtig. Vor allem für die Transfrauen, die eine geschlechtsangleichende Maßnahmen in Anspruch nehmen wollen. Die müssen diese Gewebe Gebrauch machen können, aber nicht, wenn diese Gewebe vor ihrer Entscheidung als Transmensch zu leben weggenommen worden sind. Und diese Gewebe sind sehr, sehr wichtig für Intimität, für sexuelle Geschlechtsverkehr, für diese Rhythmen, die Personen während dem Sex hat. Und genau darüber reden wir nicht. Wir sagen, das ist alles privat, es ist ein privates Thema, es ist egal, ja, ihr könnt weiterhin Orgasmen kriegen, das ist kein Problem für euch. Und genau dort, die betroffenen Menschen erzählen uns, nein, es ist nicht wie vorher. Erwachsene Männer, die ihren Penisvorhaut entschieden haben zu beschneiden, erzählen uns davon. Ein Kleinkind, der niemals ein Penisvorhaut hatte, von ihm weggenommen wurde. Als erwachsener Mensch kann es niemals vergleichen, wie es ist, mit oder ohne Vorhaut Geschlechtsverkehr zu haben. Aber erwachsene Männer, die diese Entscheidung getroffen haben, können uns erzählen. Und anhand dieser Erzählungen und Statistiken können wir auch eine Entscheidung treffen, bitte Hände weg von den Genitalien kleiner Kinder. Dann würde ich noch eine weitere Sache sagen, und das ist sehr politisch. Wenn wir über Genitalverstümmelung in Deutschland reden, dann geht es mehr in die Richtung, ja, ist es verboten für Mädchen. Ja, natürlich ist es verboten für Mädchen. Ist es seit 2023 auch verboten für intergeschlechtliche Kinder. Aber wenn wird es für die männlichen Kinder verboten? Ich glaube, es ist Zeit, dass wir das verbieten und wir lassen Kinder einfach so aufwachsen, wie sie sind. Und wenn irgendein Kind, der heute männlich zugewiesen ist, irgendwann mal sagt, ich bin eine Frau, braucht dieses Kind ein komplettes Genital. Dieses Kind braucht das um die angleichenden Maßnahmen. Dieses Kind braucht ein besseres Leben als erwachsener Mensch. Und dort hakt es. Wir reden über Selbstbestimmung der Geschlechter. Ist es wirklich? Ich sehe es nicht. Ich als Betroffene sehe es sehr, sehr schwach von der Politik, dass die Politik hinter der Religion sich versteckt und die körperliche Unversehrtheit von Kindern vernachlässigt.
Vielen Dank, Lilith Raser. So, jetzt kommen wir zum Ende unserer Kundgebung zum weltweiten Tag der genitalen Selbstbestimmung 2026 in Köln. Die Sonne hinterlässt schon ihre Spuren, aber vor allen Dingen hat sie für viel gute Laune gesorgt und für viele Menschen hier auf dem Platz, die uns zugehört haben. Jetzt zum Abschluss spricht Gislinde Naui für den Bund für Geistesfreiheit in Bayern. Gislinde, du bist dran.
Dankeschön. Vielen Dank. Bin ich gut zu hören? Prima. So, dann auch noch mal ganz offiziell Hallo von mir. Hallo Köln. Schön, dass ihr alle da seid. Und an dieser Stelle möchte ich jetzt mal Danke sagen für alle, die gekommen sind. Also auch alle, die natürlich unseren Stream verfolgt haben, wo auch immer sie jetzt sind auf der Welt. Aber auch alle, die hierher gekommen sind, schon zum x-ten Mal. Also seit 14 Jahren machen wir das hier. Und ich weiß, dass eigentlich alle von euch das hier ehrenamtlich in ihrer Freizeit machen, genauso wie ich auch. Und ich finde das super, dass wir das weiterhin so gemacht haben und dass es bis heute funktioniert hat. Deswegen ganz großes Lob an alle, die da sind, auch alle, die mitgeholfen haben. Vielen Dank, dass das heute hier stattfinden kann, weil auch dafür war hier eine Menge zu tun. Und ich denke, wir haben das hier einigermaßen gut hinbekommen. Danke auch nochmal ans Wetter, dass das so gut geklappt hat. So, ich spreche für den Bund für Geistesfreiheit in Bayern, das ist richtig. Wir sind eine säkulare humanistische Organisation, die sich auf die Fahnen geschrieben hat, Staat und Kirche zu trennen, was in Deutschland ja noch nicht so richtig der Fall ist. Und da möchte ich jetzt auch gerne gleich noch mal was aufgreifen, was Lilith eben gesagt hat. Nämlich, es stimmt, das heißt immer, das ist privat, das ist tabu, da reden wir nicht drüber. Und ich finde, wir sollten alle viel mehr über Genitalien sprechen. Das ist ein total wichtiges Thema. Wir kommen alle mit einem Genital auf die Welt und das kann man auch ruhig sagen, benennen, darüber sprechen, sich austauschen. Denn wie sollen wir sonst weiterkommen, wenn wir nicht über so wichtige, wesentliche Dinge kommunizieren? Was dagegen aus unserer Sicht auch beim Bund für Geistesfreiheit, und ich denke, die meisten werden mir zustimmen, allerdings vielleicht wirklich Privatsache ist, das ist die Religion, die jemand ausübt. Das ist die private eigene Entscheidung. Es ist meine individuelle Entscheidung, möchte ich religiös sein, wenn ja, wo, wie und wann, und möchte ich das möglicherweise körperlich an mir markieren oder möchte ich das eben nicht? Und dazu gehört auch, dass man volljährig ist, dass man erwachsen ist, dass man selber bewusst eine Entscheidung trifft, was möchte ich nicht. So, seit 14 Jahren stehen wir hier, wie ich schon sagte, die meisten von uns ehrenamtlich, ohne jedes Budget, ohne dass wir irgendwelche großen Summen hätten. Natürlich bekommen wir keine öffentliche Unterstützung, Subventionierung, sonst irgendwas. Wir machen das alles, wir haben gelernt, mit nichts irgendwie alles zu machen. Das ist total cool. Aber wir werden voll im Stich gelassen. Es fehlt nicht nur an Geld, es fehlt auch an Medien, die darüber berichten, die uns wahrnehmen, die diese Bewegung deutlich machen. Nicht nur in Deutschland, sondern eigentlich auf der ganzen Welt. Und in Deutschland haben wir nochmal diesen besonderen Punkt, das wollte ich jetzt auch gerne nochmal wiederholen, für alle, die es nicht mitbekommen haben. Warum stehen wir eigentlich hier? Und warum in Köln? Warum in Deutschland? Wir haben in Deutschland zum Thema Genitalverstümmelung inzwischen 3 verschiedene Gesetze. Das heißt, wenn ein Kind auf die Welt kommt, wird nachgeschaut, was hat es denn für ein Genital? Ja, Penis oder Vulva oder weiß ich nicht so genau. Okay. Und danach wird dann entschieden, welche Rechte dieses Kind bezüglich seines Genitals genießen darf. Seit 2012 sind wir das erste Land der Welt, das es explizit erlaubt hat, Eltern zu genehmigen, alles an dem Penis ihres Neugeborenen oder Kleinkinds machen zu lassen. Das heißt, wenn das Kind mit Penis auf die Welt kommt, beziehungsweise der Arzt sagt, ja, das ist ein Penis, dann hat man sozusagen freie Fahrt. Das ist nicht genau festgelegt, was ist es denn. Es steht im Gesetz nur irgendwas von Beschneidung des männlichen Kindes und mehr wird dazu auch gar nicht so genau gesagt. Und bei einer Vulva hatten wir zuerst auch kein richtiges Gesetz. Eigentlich war es ja verboten, weil es war ja schon immer Körperverletzung. Aber 2013 bekamen wir dann auch ein neues Gesetz, wenn das Genital weiblich ist, Finger weg, nichts, Straftat, darf überhaupt nichts passieren. Und ein paar Jahre später, ist auch gerade erwähnt worden, gab es dann noch ein drittes Gesetz, wenn das ein sogenanntes intersexuell geborenes Kind oder mit nicht eindeutig zuweisbaren Geschlechtsmerkmalen ist, weiß man nicht so genau, Penis oder Vulva, dann nennt sich das weder Genitalverstümmelung noch Beschneidung, dann sprechen wir von einer Behandlung. Und diese Behandlung darf auch nur unter bestimmten Umständen stattfinden. Da gibt es dann Regeln, was darf man nicht. Und der Stand ist, glaube ich, soweit, sofern es keine medizinische oder therapeutische Notwendigkeit gibt, auch Finger weg. So. Das sind die Gesetze in Deutschland, das haben wir jetzt gerade, da stehen wir nach 14 Jahren immer noch und ich habe das Gefühl, es wird immer schlimmer, es wird weniger darüber gesprochen und diese Gesetze finden Anwendung. Gut, ich bin jetzt auch ähnlich wie die meisten von euch ein bisschen frustriert. Ich stehe hier ja nicht nur als Humanistin, ich stehe hier auch als Feministin, weil das ist sexistisch und gegen Gewalt an Kindern waren wir sowieso schon immer. Und jetzt habe ich mir gedacht, zum Abschluss würde ich gerne was Positives sagen. Und manchmal blickt man ja so in die Geschichte zurück und sagt, boah, wisst ihr noch damals, als es noch bei uns die Todesstrafe gab? Oder wisst ihr noch, als Frauen nicht wählen durften? Oder wisst ihr noch, als es noch keine Sozialversicherung gab? Oder da kann ja ganz viel einfallen. Und vielleicht gibt es auch irgendwann einen Tag in der Zukunft, vielleicht einen 7. Mai, da werden wir nicht hier sein, sondern jeder von uns macht vielleicht auf irgendeiner Insel einen schönen Urlaub und ich werde es dann auch machen, bin dann vielleicht schon eine alte Frau und sitze am Meer und denke mir, ach, tolles Wetter, mache ich doch mal ein kleines Posting für Instagram und dann werde ich rückblicken und euch erzählen. Wisst ihr noch damals, als wir jedes Jahr in Köln demonstriert haben und uns keiner zugehört hat? Und wisst ihr noch damals, wie dann plötzlich Dinge ins Rollen gekommen sind? Und Achtung, das ist jetzt meine Fantasie, so hätte es gelaufen sein können, aber wir werden es dann später wissen. Wisst ihr noch damals, als die erste Transfrau vor Gericht gegangen ist und gesagt hat, als mir damals die Penisvorhaut abgeschnitten wurde, das war eine FGM und ich klage jetzt. Und naja, sie hatte dann leider vor Gericht keinen Erfolg, aber es war plötzlich in der Presse, es war im Fernsehen, in der Tagesschau wurde berichtet. Und man dachte sich in Deutschland, hey krass, wir haben 3 Gesetze für verschiedene Genitalien, jetzt haben wir noch ein Selbstbestimmungsgesetz, wir wissen ja gar nicht, ist das Kind männlich, weiblich, da müssen wir irgendwie nachjustieren. Und dann hat man angefangen, darüber zu sprechen. Und dann kamen plötzlich noch mehr Berichte vom afrikanischen Kontinent, beispielsweise aus Kenia oder zum Beispiel auch aus Indonesien, wo ja die weibliche Genitalverstümmelung verboten ist und trotzdem praktiziert wird. Und auf einmal war das Bewusstsein da, ja, das wird ja immer noch gemacht. Und dann sind noch viel mehr Menschen auf die Straße gegangen und plötzlich war das total das Thema. Und dann, jetzt gehe ich komplett durch die Decke. Plötzlich hat sich Kenia für die Fußball-Weltmeisterschaft qualifiziert. Am Ende haben sie gewonnen und der kenianische Mannschaftskapitän stand da und die ganze Welt hörte ihm zu. Und er sagte, vor so und so vielen Jahren kamen weiße Männer in mein Dorf und haben mir einfach die Vorhaut abgeschnitten, weil sie gesagt haben, es hilft gegen HIV. Und darunter leide ich bis heute. Und in diesem Moment ging das um die ganze Welt. Und plötzlich hat sich das in einem Schneeballsystem vervielfältigt. Auf einmal hat sogar hier in Deutschland irgendjemand verstanden, dass das nicht geht. Und dann wurde Genitalverstümmelung überall auf der Welt verboten. Und jetzt sitze ich hier auf dieser Insel und schicke euch allen einen schönen Gruß. Es ist schade, dass wir uns gerade nicht sehen, aber es ist cool, dass wir das alle nicht mehr machen müssen, weil das jetzt eine verdammte Selbstverständlichkeit ist, dass kein Kind mehr genital verstümmelt wird. Ja, das könnte passieren, vielleicht. Ich hoffe, dass das eine Geschichte ist, die wir uns eines Tages erzählen werden. Vielleicht werde da nicht ich am Meer sitzen, vielleicht sitzt da eine andere alte Frau, weil das sehr lange gedauert hat. Aber es ist ein Traum, den ich träume und ich glaube, wir träumen den alle gemeinsam. Und wenn viele Menschen die gleichen Ziele und die gleichen Träume haben, dann können sie vielleicht irgendwann Realität werden. Im Augenblick befinden wir uns leider noch mitten in einem Albtraum, aber ich würde sagen, der ist auch leichter zu bewältigen, wenn wir das alle gemeinsam machen. Und deswegen schön, dass ihr hier seid. Ich hoffe, ihr kommt nächstes Jahr alle wieder und dann freue ich mich, euch zu sehen und vielleicht sind wir dann schon ein Stück weiter. Vielen Dank. So, dann allen noch einen schönen Tag. Have a nice day, everybody, and see you next year. Bye.